Blog Talk Radio.
It's almost time for the Midsummer Classic, and Sports Drive Live's got you covered. With All-Star Night in America, we will break down the American League and National League rosters. Who are the most glaring omissions from the list? We will also take a look at baseball at the midway point, the surprises, the disappointments. All that and more next. And welcome to All-Star Night in America on Sports Drive Live. Derek Shindano taking you to the next 30 minutes of non-stop sports talk. The number to call is 646-649-1921. Reach us on Twitter at Sports Drive Live and like the Sports Drive Live Facebook page. Okay, Brian, I heard that you were in Florida. So how was your trip?
Well, Sean, you know, it was great, and I'm so happy to be back. I'd like to congratulate you on hosting the show last week yourself. Sounded great. You know, had a great time, and I'm happy to be back just in time for the All-Star game.
Well, I thought we were going to have 30 minutes tonight. It looks like we only have 15. Wow. So that's the way it's set up. So let's just jump right into it tonight with the All-Stars, and let's just take a look at the American League and National League All-Star rosters.
All right, so with the American League, we have for catcher Mike Napoli of the Texas Rangers, first base Prince Fielder of the Detroit Tigers, second base Robinson Cano of the New York Yankees, third base Adrian Beltre of the Texas Rangers, shortstop Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees, outfielder Josh Hamilton of once again the Texas Rangers, center field you have Curtis Granderson, outfielder of the New York Yankees, and outfield Jose Bautista of the Toronto Blue Jays, and the DH for the American League starters is David Ortiz of the Boston Red Sox. So pitchers for the American League is Ryan Cook of the Oakland A's, Hugh Darvish of the Texas Rangers, the final vote winner, Matt Harrison of the Texas Rangers, Felix Hernandez of the Seattle Mariners, Jim Johnson of the Baltimore Orioles, Joe Nathan of the Texas Rangers, Chris Perez of the Cleveland Indians, David Price of the Tampa Bay Rays, Fernando Rodney of the Tampa Bay Rays, injured CC Sabathia of the New York Yankees, Chris Sale of the Chicago White Sox, Chester Verlander of the Detroit Tigers, Jared Weaver of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, and C.J. Wilson of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. For the reserves,
we have the reserves here as well. Joe Mauer, the catcher for the Minnesota Twins, catcher Matt Wieters of the Baltimore Orioles. The shortstops are Elvis Andrus of the Rangers, Asdrubal Cabrera of the Cleveland Indians, Miguel Cabrera for the Detroit Tigers, Ian Kinsler at second, and at first base is Paul Konerko of the White Sox. Trout, Jones, and Trumbo, two Angels and an Oriole, are your reserve outfielders. Billy Butler and Adam Dunn are the designated hitters. Butler from Kansas City and Adam Dunn, of course, of the White Sox. Now let's take a look at the National League. The starter at catcher is Buster Posey, fully healthy here in 2012 for the San Francisco Giants. The starting first baseman is Joey Votto, the former National League MVP from the Cincinnati Reds. And the second baseman is from the Atlanta Braves, and his name is Dan Uggla. Third base, surprisingly, the starter at third base, Pablo Sandoval. The shortstop is Rafael Furcal. The outfielders, Melky Cabrera, the former Yankee, Carlos Beltran, the former Met, now with the St. Louis Cardinals. The injured Matt Kemp, who was replaced on the roster by Chipper Jones. We'll get to that in a moment. The pitchers are Matt Cain of the Giants, Aroldis Chapman from the Reds, R.A. Dickey from the Mets, who's had a fantastic season, Gio Gonzalez in his first year in Washington, Cole Hamels from the Philadelphia Phillies, Joel Hanrahan from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Clayton Kershaw, Cy Young Award winner from the Los Angeles Dodgers, Craig Kimbrell, Rookie of the Year from the Atlanta Braves, Lance Lynn from the world champion St. Louis Cardinals, Wade Miley, the lone Arizona Diamondback representative, first-year closer, Jonathan Papelbon, first year in Philadelphia, Steven Strasburg in his first full season with the Washington Nationals, Houston Street, the former Oakland A and Colorado Rocky, now closing for the Padres, and the reserves are Yadier Molina for the St. Louis Cardinals, Carlos Ruiz, the catcher from the Philadelphia Phillies, Brian LaHare, the first baseman who's had a solid season for the Chicago Cubs, Jose Altuve, who's had perhaps the best season of any National League second baseman from the Houston Astros, Starlin Castro, the young star, shortstop, notice the pun, from the Chicago Cubs. You got Ian Desmond from the Washington Nationals, the shortstop, David Freese, who was added by the final vote in the internet vote today through Twitter, from the St. Louis Cardinals, Chipper Jones added in his final season as an honorary All-Star, David Wright, the third baseman from the New York Mets, Ryan Braun, Jay Bruce, Carlos Gonzalez, Andrew McCutcheon, and Giancarlo Stanton are your outfielders. Braun from Milwaukee, Giancarlo from the Marlins, Andrew McCutchen from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Cargo from the Colorado Rockies, and Jay Bruce from the Cincinnati Reds. And what is your take on the construction of these all-star rosters?
Well, clearly we're pressed for time, so I'm just going to get my thoughts out there quickly. Of course, it's a great team, a lot of deserving players on there. But once again, the fan voting really tarnished this all-star class, as it really has the last couple of years. Now, of course, it's still going to be an exciting all-star game, exciting all-star weekend. But, there are a lot of players who are either starting or are reserves that really make you scratch your head. There's a lot of deserving guys who aren't on the team, and I'm sure Gershon has a lot of snubs, and as do I. It's really questionable to me. The fan voting really is out of whack. They really do not need. They should not have that power, the overwhelming power to select the players. Fans really sometimes pick for their favorite players or their favorite teams. It really messes up the All-Star votes, and it really messes up the meaning of being selected to the All-Star team.
Here's the problem that I have. Mike Napoli, a .238 hitter going into play last week, is your All-Star starting catcher by the fans. Joe Mauer's had an over 300 season. Why is he not selected by the fans, especially with the pedigree of Joe Mauer, and that everybody knows who this guy is, and that he's regarded as perhaps the best catcher in the American League? Curtis Granderson is having a subpar season compared to last year, yet Adam Jones is not the starter, or Mike Trout, because Mike Trout does not appear on the ballot. You mentioned to me before the show started that Rafael Soriano should be there. How come he's not there instead of CC Sabathia? He's done an admirable job replacing the Mariano Rivera, which is in itself an impossible task. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Buster Posey's having a solid season, but Carlos Ruiz is hitting over 350. Carlos Ruiz is having a fantastic season, perhaps the best of his career. He's not starting. And at second base for the National League, Dan Uggla is also a guy hitting about 230, 235. Jose Altuve is hitting over 300, first full season for the Astros, but because he plays for the Houston Astros, he's not going to get an opportunity to start in the All-Star game, which I think is a disgrace in itself. I mean, this is just embarrassing to look at. I don't even know if this is just a bad joke or something. I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, we didn't mention about some of the snubs yet, but just looking at the All-Star rosters and the way they're constructed by the fans, I feel that the fans should have a lesser vote.
Definitely, and I'm not as passionate as you may be, I think. I think it also has to do with, aside from the fan voting, a lot of the All-Star game is a lot of fluff and a lot of non-meaningness and a lot of stupidity, specifically from the commissioner, making home field advantage count for the World Series. I could go on all day. And in fact, I made a video on YouTube last year about how to fix the All-Star game. Clearly, my thoughts were not realized. But, I mean, yeah, there are just so many snubs. I mean, so many, people who should be starting, I mean, how is Pablo Sandoval the starting third baseman for the National League? Yeah, how is Buster Posey the starting catcher for the National League? David Wright.
It comes down to the Giants fans, and I'm sorry about that. It comes down to the Giants fans voting for their All-Stars and voting for their players. The Mets fans could have done the same thing for David Wright. The Phillies could have done that for Carlos Ruiz. I mean, that's what they could have done. They didn't come out. The Giants fans did, the Ranger fans did, and that's why their guys are in the All-Star game and starting in positions that they probably should not be starting in. No offense to those guys, of course, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. And the fans you can't let the fans decide the All-Star team, because as knowledgeable as a lot of fans are, like you are, Gershon, people selected Mike Napoli because of what they saw last postseason. He's not the same player. I mean, Adrian Beltre should not, I mean, they have similar numbers, Beltre and Cabrera. It's a bad comparison. But, players, if fans cannot think of their favorite players or what players have done last year, the year before. It's about this season. And a lot of players are not the same as they were before or are doing way better than they were last year, and yet they're getting snubbed by fans and getting ignored by the general population of Major League Baseball fans.
And here's the list that both of us compiled collectively about the guys that should be at the All-Star game or should have been considered. Jake Peavy, A.J. Pierzynski, Jason Hamill, Josh Reddick, Josh Willingham, Edwin Encarnacion over Adam Dunn, Mike Moustakas, who should represent the Kansas City Royals, who are hosting the All-Star game. They only have one All-Star representative, and in a year when they're hosting the All-Star game, you have to find room for Mike Moustakas. That makes no sense. Jared Salamakia, you could give consideration. How about the former Yankee A.J. Burnett, James McDonald, who's J-Max having a great season for the Pirates, Zach Greinke, Ryan Vogelsong, Madison Bumgarner, Johnny Cueto, Chris Capuano, that dude BP, Martin Prado's 7th in the National League in hitting. Jed Lowry's having a solid season for the Houston Astros, 13 home runs first season in the National League. Aaron Hill and Matt Holliday, who has been tearing the cover off the ball over the last 2 or 3 weeks with the Cardinals.
I mean, that list just really speaks for itself. And exactly, I mean, even the names, if you have an idea of the stats, me and Gershon are both stat guys. I mean, just their names sound like all-stars who immediately think of their stats. I mean, Jason Hamlin's ridiculous numbers from the Baltimore Orioles were, for the first time, relevant at the first half, and God knows how long. I mean, Matt Holliday has been the hottest hitter in baseball, potentially, over the last 2-3 weeks. I mean, there's another guy that you could add on there, Johan Santana, who's had a great comeback for me personally. I know you don't agree with that, but there's so many players that are so much deserving, and the problem is there's only so much room because there are a lot of deserving all-stars who are all-stars and who are heading to Kansas City. But to me, I mean, even Michael Bourne hitting 310, 359 on base percentage, Austin Jackson, I don't know if you said that or not, 332 average. It's just, there's so many, statistics that really jump out at me and Gershon, or Gershon and I, whatever. It's just so, it's agonizing that these players don't get on the All-Star ballot, and who knows what they'll do next year or in the future of their careers. This could be their last moment or their only moment to shine. I'm not saying that will be, but, you never know what happens in the future. And these players are so deserving that the list you said, it gets me, riled up and angry when I think about it. I wasn't so much so a couple minutes ago, but now, I mean, you're so right, Gershon. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, but you know what? Sometimes something that's unbelievable is actually the truth. Perception's reality. And if you look at it, one thing that also bugs me is that, remember, Tony La Russa is the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. So some people feel that there's some sort of bias that a couple of Pittsburgh Pirates like J-Mac and A.J. Burnett are not there, and primarily with the Cincinnati Reds where he's had some history with guys like Brandon Phillips and Johnny Cueto, and that they're not represented. Johnny Cueto's having another unbelievable, fantastic season. Under 250 is ERA. Perhaps the most underrated pitcher in the game of baseball. I actually saw this guy pitch in person when the Yankees were facing the Reds back in May. And he's just one of those pitchers that is somebody that he doesn't get the recognition, but he gets the job done. And I don't know if there's something involved with that. I don't know how the process goes, but I feel it should be 1/4 should go to the players in the All-Star vote, 1/4 to the broadcasters, 1/4 to the coaches and players, and that's how it should be. Basically, each share getting 25%, and it should go the same way in the Pro Bowl, and same way in every other sport. It shouldn't just be solely on the fans. The fans, it's just like I mentioned in this song from Smash Mouth, that the years start coming, they don't stop coming. And it's just, in that song, you hear also that line, your brain gets smart, but your head gets dumb. And it feels like we have all the stats in front of us, everything that goes on in front of our fingertips, yet we're getting dumber as fans. And it's pretty sad. I don't know if we're just voting for the players that we like, and we're just not educated enough. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe you could explain it, Brian.
I mean, I really can't explain it. I mean, it's so agreeable, it's so understandable, and that really is the universal fix for all All-Star games, because the MLB isn't the only one that has a corrupt system. I mean, the Pro Bowl is just pathetic. I could go into rants about every single All-Star game, really. It's
it doesn't have any meaning to it. That's the problem. There's no meaning to the All-Star game, yet you're going to have home field advantage for the World Series.
Right, exactly. They treat it like a spring training game. It's pathetic. I mean, I wish we had all the time in the world, because I really could take all that time. And I can't think of anything. I'm so angry about this right now.
Yeah, well, I think your anger is well said, and there's so many places where you could probably display that anger. But you know what? We're out of time. Hate to say it. And that's going to do it for this edition of Sports Drive Live. For Brian and our entire crew, Gershon checking out, time to say goodbye. We will talk to